The UFC is trying its damnedest to follow two trains of thought at the same time. Having many fights as the market can handle, and having marquee matchup with their biggest stars. In 2011, the Big Fox deal was prematurely started. Fans were in hopes that we would see big matches on a semi-consistent basis. We all knew that we're not going to get title fights and number one contender fights for free all the time. The presentation of UFC fights is still a little bit too NFL-ish. They're trying to target a great potential market with that audience, but I kind of think the UFC had it right the first time by stealing other people's thunder by having the first couple of seasons of The Ultimate Fighter take place right after WWE Raw. The problem now is that the UFC is obligated not just to satisfy Fox, but, those Ultimate Fight Nights on FX, the Ultimate Fighter TV show on Spike, Fuel, and of course its pay-per-view market all at the same time. So what do we actually get? A lot of main card fights that don't mean anything. Headliners like Bigfoot versus Brown, that one main event after UFC 152, the last Pearson fight is all good for being the lower main card, but not headliners. I know what you'll say. It's for free, so what? Well, that means the UFC is not giving fans what they want, but they're forced to put on shows which could be disastrous in terms of future matchmaking later on down the road. We're starting to see the conflict right now. I honestly, God, don't know what Joe Silva does. There's a group of people right now that claim they want to see Chris Weidman face off against Anderson Silva. Personally, I think that they're trolls, but Chris is undefeated and deserves a shot soon because of that. However, just recently, Dana White has stated that if Michael Bisping defeats Vitor Belfort, he'll get the title shot. Now, the count has put in work for some time at 185 and is a big draw in Europe for obvious reasons. The UFC, its fighters, fans, and its matchmaker would not have any confusion about how to determine a number one contender if they just took the same format they used in the show that got them famous. The Ultimate Fighter tournament-style matchmaking. You don't believe me? You're going to make a comment saying I don't know anything about MMA, bitch? Well, tell me how the hell Royce Gracie, Mark Coleman, Wanderlei Silva, Shogun, Fedor, Dan Henderson, Gomi, and Kazuhiro Misaki, and in a strange way, Sakuraba, got famous worldwide through tournaments. Every martial art, from wrestling to taekwondo, uses this format. Instead, we get treated to a welterweight title fight coming up in 2013 involving a guy who just came off a loss. I don't care how much Nick Diaz walked down Carlos Condit, he didn't do as much damage. For those who don't know, Condit is a kickboxer and he needs a distance to throw his arsenal. So he's going to circle out and back up against a boxer/grappler. Why wouldn't he? Well, the answer to that is that the UFC wants to make money, and a fight between Hendricks and GSP probably would not make as much as GSP versus Nick. Back in the fall of 2012, the hype machine said that every 205er was scared to face John Jones. Now let's think about this here. If you're Shogun or Lyoto, you have to make sure that you're 100% ready to face John Jones again while he's still champ, because what do you do if you lose again? Do you go to 185? Do you go to heavyweight? Do you retire? There are just not many options after a rematch with someone you've already lost while they're champion. So it wasn't the fact that the UFC was asking them to flesh out the card and handing them a title shot. They were backhandedly asking them to put their careers on the line, to complete a card in a swamp of cards that 3 months no one will remember anything about except the ass whooping that you would take for the second time. Ultimately, the UFC ended up having to cancel 151 because, to be honest with you, without the main event, no one gave a fuck about that card. I mean, nobody. And another thing, I don't think people would cared about the Rashad Evans versus John Jones card if those two people weren't fighting. It's not completely UFC's fault. I mean, fans want to see more fights, and the UFC wants to satisfy that demand. However, they're not really giving fights fans want to see. If they really did that, there'll be no need to cancel UFC 151, but they knew that they did not have the fights that fans wanted to see. They had one fight fans wanted to see. And you just can't fill up all these cards with these Ultimate Fighter contestants. At this point right now, December 31st, 2012, there has been over 424 contestants or potential contestants for the Ultimate Fighter reality TV show. I would be damned if 5% of that group was worth anything in the UFC today. At this point, we all know that Zuffa owns Pride and Strikeforce, but instead of just owning them and allowing them to continue their operations, much like Nike has done with Converse, they decide to shut them down and do nothing with them except expand their own brand. Some fighters got absorbed, but not all. Actually, this is how the UFC got Lyoto Machida and Rampage from that one do-nothing league back in 2007. There's no point in reviving either one of those leagues or making a new brand. But I propose that all MMA, not just the UFC, follows this tournament style, and for those select fighters that did not quite make it to the promised land but still bring it, headlining Fuel or FX is okay with me.